Okay, so in this video, we're gonna move on from lifecycle functions and we're going to describe the next AI functionality, um, context actions. So remember from last video, we had the ability to add lifecycle functions to any of your models, just like being able to add code to CRUD functions. The other thing that you can do is you could come into your context providers and add AI functions there. So as an example, let's say we want to go into localization. We'll click on localization. And if you guys remember, this allows us to split field entry values by language. So over here, there's this oh, maybe I should also show this for a second. If you ever want to see what the available values are here, you can see that in here. But coming over here, you have this thing that is very similar to a lifecycle function. It's called a context action. And so these are user-triggered tools that transform content based on context values. So I don't know if I explained this last time, but any function that the AI is able to produce for you basically runs the entry through a function and then spits out the modified entry after the fact. This function in the system has access to 3 or 4 arguments. It has the ability to run any entry functions. It has the ability to know what the context is that it's running through. And then it passes a few helper functions to a function so that it's more powerful. By default, it has an HTTP function, so you can tell it to call any APIs. And then it also has the ability to call what we call service providers. So I'm going to move from here really quickly. We'll come right back. If I go down to settings, and you have your org settings, things like this. We'll go through API keys and webhooks later, but there's this idea of a service provider. And in here, you could make a new service provider. For example, you could talk to Stripe. You could talk to an email service. And when you create these services in here, then you actually get a handle to this so that you can use this in your lifecycle functions or in your context action functions. Let's come back to context actions for a second. I just wanted to explain what kind of things you can do when you talk to the AI and what makes it powerful. So context actions. This context action knows that it's talking about the localization context provider. And so just like last time, I can create it. And now it's thinking about the context provider that it wants to create a function for. And it's looked at it. It knows that it's based on the language model. It knows that there are different types of language values. And based on what it has seen, it's suggesting, well, why don't I translate all of the text fields to the target language while I preserve formatting? It has a few other things: adapt to the cultural norms of the selected locale, generate locale-specific variations. I'm going to try this guy just off the bat, and let's see what it does for us. Okay, it's actually made picture action for you. It says, I'm going to call this translate text fields. What does it do? It translates all the text-based fields to the target language while preserving the original base values. You can see in here, it describes it in more detail and how it works. It'll tell you what what field types it supports, and kind of gives you an example. I'm going to create here, and you can see there's my context action. Now what does this do? Well, now I have a context action for my localization context, right? This guy right here. So let's come back. Remember, we applied this to products. So for example, we have, I don't know, Swedish in here, where we could come in here and we could say, hey, the sweater is so nice and warm, and we could come in here and override this by hand. But you can see now that there's a tool, and it's the tool that we just created with AI. Now I can click this, and we'll have a little spinner. And I don't speak Swedish, but it kind of looks Swedish to me. And what it has done is it knew that this and this field had to do with the localization context, and it ran those through the function and translated them with AI. The other thing that, and you see I'm in my Swedish context here now. There we go. Let's say I don't want to do all of these by hand and click and translate and click and translate. Well, since it's a tool, you now have the same tool in bulk, and I could say translate. And because it understands what kind of function it is, it says, listen, I'll run it on all of the entries that don't have the context override yet, or you can rerun it on all of them. Or if you wanted to, you could just pick the ones that you wanted to run, and then you could run the tool on just those three. But we're going to do this. We're going to come back to our tool, and we're going to say, I want it on all the rest of these guys, and I'll just run it through it, and you can see now it's running again. And hopefully this will work. There we go. And now all of them are translated. This thing is up to your imagination. You can see that we have market context. We have a person loyalty context. You could come into your context providers. You could come to market. You could click a context action over here and have a conversation with your AI about what you want to happen to certain fields based on the market context. You know? So I hope that was useful. I hope you can understand how context actions are used and how powerful they can be, just like life cycle functions, which we discussed last time. That's it for this video. We're going to keep going down the left-hand side so you guys can see what else this system can do.